Hey, you guys, this is the Couplings Fire podcast. Here's a couple of things you might need to know, or maybe you just forgot. I'm Taylor, a volunteer firefighter and also a fireway to my favorite firefighter. Join me as I talk anything and everything fire related. I don't claim to be an expert, I just love to talk fire, and I'm not afraid to get into real and deep discussions. Everything I say is my own opinion and does not reflect the opinions of any agency or organization I am associated with. Let's get on with the episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Couplings Fire podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Anderson, and I am joined by my friend this week, Justin Ferris. We have an interesting conversation for you, something very, very different. I don't know if you guys are prepared for this. Well, hopefully you are. You've seen the episode title already. So this is going to be a fun one, very different for the fire service, very different for me. I have no idea where this episode is going to go. I have no idea what questions I'm going to ask. I have a few lined out, but I'm sure some will pop out from out of nowhere. But first up, Justin, thank you so much for being on. I'm really happy and excited to have you on today. So thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Taylor. I appreciate you reaching out. This is kind of not very many people have this experience. So it's kind of, and I can't believe I was going through a PowerPoint that I created when I came back from Antarctica for, I think it was like a 4th or 5th grade class. One of the teachers reached out to me and I was like, just kind of scrolling through and I'm like, holy cow, that was in 2003. I'm like, it's almost 20 years ago. I'm like, holy cow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So Justin, for those of you who, wow, words, Taylor. Okay. For those who are listening, who don't know who you are, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
You bet. Justin Ferris, captain with Grand Island Fire. Been on the fire department in Grand Island for January of 17 years. Been a captain for just shy of 4 years. Started out the fire service. My grandpa was the fire chief in Aurora, Nebraska. He was on the fire department for over 40 years. Kind of grew up in that fire station there. As I grew up, went to college, originally wanted to become a veterinarian and realized I didn't want to be in school that long. So
I don't blame you.
Kind of came back and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try out this firefighting thing. It kind of runs in the blood. So I started trying to figure out how to get onto a fire department, talked to a few people when I was living in Lincoln, and a friend of ours, the family was on Southwest Fire just outside of Lincoln, got me in contact with them and went and applied. They said they had just started an academy and it would be 6 months to a year or whatever before I could get on. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that stinks, but I understand. And they're like, well, we're just starting a Firefighter 1 class. If you'd like to join, you can come every Tuesday, Thursday night or whatever, and we'll have class and kind of get you a jump start, see if you're really interested in this. I'm like, sure. So I started going to class, and after a couple of weeks, they were like, the chief at the time's like, yeah, we're just going to get you on the department. You have the drive, the passion. We want you here. So kind of started down that road. Ended up getting my EMT while I was there. I was there on Southwest for a little over a year. And then one of the guys his brother was there, had just come back from Antarctica. And I'm like, you were a firefighter in Antarctica? Like, really? How? That's the typical question I get all the time.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that is exactly going through my brain when I heard about this the first time.
I was just all ears for him, telling me all about his story, and I'm like, that's awesome. And he's like, yeah, it's a contract gig. You just apply, and he goes, if you want the chief's number, I can get you that and talk to her, and you just start the application. I'm like, absolutely. So we went down that road and started doing it, had an interview over the phone with one of the lieutenants at the time, and I had to fly out to Denver to do a psych eval and some testing there, which a 4-hour psychological test was, that's a doozy.
4 hours?
Multiple choice, true, false. One of the questions was like, they kept asking, like, they would repeat the questions to see how you answered. And I just remember one of the questions was, I see blue demons. And I'm like, what?
What?
But, and they asked that question like 5 or 6 times throughout the test. But so came back to Lincoln, and they said, we really like to have you. We've got you as an alternate for the winter and summer, but we've got everybody that we want right now. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just continue being a volunteer at Southwest and working construction. And about August, that would have been like in January when I started that process. And then in August, they called up and said, hey, we had somebody drop out. Can you be here at the end of September, first part of October? I'm like, sure. And so I had to quickly get a physical with the doctor, see the dentist, go through all these hoops. And then I flew out and flew to from Lincoln to Los Angeles, and then LA to Auckland, New Zealand, and then into Christchurch, New Zealand, sorry. And then from there, we had a 4-hour flight to McMurdo Station in Antarctica. That was in a C-141 Air Force cargo airplane where you sat on cargo netting with basically your knees in between somebody else's knee, and you had somebody's knee in between yours legs, and for 4 hours. We got down there right away, just getting ready to land, and a storm blew in. So we had to turn around and fly back to New Zealand. So 8 hours on a plane, and started and ended at the same spot. So
oh dang.
We did that twice, 2 days in a row. And then on the third day, we finally made it down there. So I got down there I think it was October 3rd. So, and then it was just, you were issued cold weather gear, all the stuff while you were in New Zealand, and you get off the plane, and you just kind of started in, and they issued us bunker gear when we got there. And most everybody was already there because their contract had started a few weeks prior to mine. So I was kind of the odd man out. They all went to Salt Lake City, Utah for ARF training, which I missed out on. So I got basically on the job training when I was there. The summer was pretty much, there was like 1,200 people on the base. It's a research facility for the National Science Foundation. They do marine biology, geology, a lot of ologies.
So is that pretty much what is down there for the population is to do with that?
So a lot of it is, you're there for the National Science Foundation, basically. And then the town, to have that research facility, you have to have, other facilities. So basically a small town, mm-hmm. you had a mechanic shop, you had a carpenters, electricians, plumbers, firefighters, cooks, general workers. So it was about 1,200 people in the summertime when I was there. And from like August to September, it's a transition from total darkness to 24 hours of daylight. So you'll start to, and then you'll have 5 months of total light while from like September to March, kind of in that time frame, which was quite interesting. They had, like any small town, you had a couple bars, so you'd come out of the bar at midnight or whatever, and
daylight out.
Daylight, you have to put sunglasses on, but which was kind of different. And then in March, it kind of transitioned back down, where the sun would go down for just a little bit and then rise back up. But as the days went on, it just totally disappeared for 5 months, which was very interesting.
So I got to back up a little bit. So first off, I want to give everyone listening my impression of Antarctica when I think about it, which is honestly Hoth from Star Wars. like that is what I'm thinking of when I think of Antarctica. I'm assuming it's not quite like that. But I don't know.
It's very similar. So McMurdo Station is actually on Ross Island. It's about 850 miles north of the South Pole, and it's actually on lava rock. So it's like really dust, like very like that red lava rock, kind of dusty. So in the summertime, it's, the temperature is, averages like 30, 35 degrees,
Okay. Honestly, not as cold as what I thought it'd be.
No, and it's not bad. So a lot of times the snow melts in town and then it's really muddy and, kind of crummy. And then, so it kind of reminds me, like McMurdo Station reminds me of like a mining town, like in Colorado, kind of that dusty, grimy, and then you got snow and everything. And then in the winter time, yeah, it's definitely like Hoth. Like it is cold. It's, total darkness. The average temperature with the wind chill was, about negative 50 degrees. I mean, it was crazy. But yeah, so like in the summertime, we worked 24 on, 24 off, and then we had a Kelly day every other week. So my Kelly day was Saturdays. So I never worked a Saturday while I was there.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, honestly,
there wasn't much to do.
It probably doesn't really make any difference because they're probably all on weird schedules there. Does it work like most people who actually do the scientific work? Do they work like a natural work week, or do they do?
They do. They work. So the fire department was the only department that worked
shift based,
kind of a normal fire department schedule. Everybody else worked 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. 6 days a week.
Okay.
So, and then the town is, like where we live, like everybody lived in a dorm room basically. So you had roommates, you had, and that was kind of the.
I didn't even thought about that. Okay, yeah. No, you're bringing up so many points. I'm like, where do you live? You have roommates? What?
Yep. So like my room, we had, the rooms were ranged from 2 to 4 people. I had a 4-person room, and all 4 of us were on the fire department. We had kind of split it up to where we had 2 A shifters and 2 B shifters in our room. And we would have basically the top bunks on each side of the room were the B shifters, and the bottom bunks were the A shifters. So you kind of had separation while you're there. My roommate, Jason Fitch at the time, he was from Colorado. We became real good friends, and we basically I stayed for a whole year. He stayed for just the summer, but for that, 4 or 5 months, we hung out together 24/7. I mean, it was just, we had the same Kelly day. We had, we worked the same shift, lived together. So that was kind of neat. But yeah, we would, on our days off, we would go to the gym, work out for a few hours, and come back, eat lunch, take a nap, maybe go back to the gym in the afternoon. And then in the evening, there's not much to do. So there was quite a bit of alcohol consumed.
So are there any like really anything to do otherwise, like, or is it just kind of hang out?
There's different clubs and activities you could do. When I was there, the bowling alley's not there anymore. They had a small little bowling alley.
I was like, I think I remember you talking about that. So
yeah, they had a couple bars, a smoking bar and a non-smoking bar. They had a coffee house where you could have coffee and wine, and it was kind of that quiet, sit back. They had different clubs that you could do. There was people that, they had a greenhouse. People would take care of a greenhouse. They had a radio station. In the wintertime, another firefighter and I, on our days off in the mornings, we would do a little radio show, which was kind of fun to do. There's plenty of stuff to do. And you could also, in the summertime, you could go out and go hiking. There was different trails and paths that you could take and go see different things. So it kind of kept your time.
Okay. So with that sparks another thought here. In the summertime, going out and hiking and stuff, what about wildlife? Is it that much of a problem or not? Like, I
So
don't even know. Honestly, I don't know, except for the cartoons in my head and thinking of polar bears and penguins. That's all I have in my head. So like, is
Yep.
that common? Not common?
So so that's one of the everybody's like, did you see any polar bears? I'm like, no, polar bears are at the North Pole, not the South Pole.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah. So I'm totally off.
Yep. There were so out on the ice, you would see penguins quite a bit. There was emperor penguins. Those are your normal, about 3 foot tall penguins that everybody kind of
Knows and
knows.
loves.
Yep. And then they had little Adelie penguins. They were about a foot tall. They were quick. They were all over. Then you had leopard seals,
Okay.
Waddell seals, and that's pretty much all that we saw up close, like that were close to McMurdo Station. Once you got out to the open water and got further out, you might see some killer whales and more penguins, but that's about it. In McMurdo Station, there was they were called skuas, SKUA. They are basically the seagull's evil twin. They were.
Oh, well, I think seagulls are kind of evil anyways. So.
Yeah. So they would die, like, as you would come out of the galley, the kitchen, like if you had any sort of food in your hand, they would dive bomb you and try to take your food. So, firefighters being firefighters, we would always, try to stuff a little chunk of bread in somebody's hood on their coat.
Oh man.
But
I'm getting like the visions in my head of like, the movie The Birds or something like that, all just attacking you.
Yep, pretty much. So I mean, for the most part, that's kind of the wildlife. They did have scuba divers that would go down, and a lot of the firefighters on their day off would basically tend for the scuba divers, and they would bring up different marine animals, and they would do research on them, and so. But yeah, that was kind of the gist of the wildlife. There was, not much. So
yeah. So maybe I should just know more about Antarctica or just, the world in general. But so is like the base of it, is the entire Antarctica, is that all volcanic rock stuff, or is it
for the most part? Yeah.
Okay.
And like where we were at, we're on the tip of Ross Island is where McMurdo Station's at. So we were actually landing C-141s and C-17s on the ocean, like frozen ocean. So the ice was like 20 to 30 foot deep or thick.
Wow.
And we were landing these huge planes on it, and it was very like you clear off the snow and it was pretty clear ice. It was like you almost had that like light bluish color, like you'd see like in the Caribbean, which was really cool. But
oh man, that's weird. So not much in terms of like vegetation or anything. There's really no place for it to grow unless in the greenhouse.
Yep, in the greenhouse. Yep.
Okay. So wow. Okay, so just overall living is very different.
Yes. Like
oh, go
in
ahead.
the summertime, we would, for the most part, when we were out and about, your body kind of acclimates to the temperature. And for the most part, if we weren't going to be outside very long, we were mostly in our, normal duty uniform, like you'd see guys wearing around here in the wintertime, a job shirt, maybe a light coat, or just your bunker jacket when you'd walk outside. But yeah, if we were going to be out for a while, we would be pretty much, we'd just put our bunker gear on. That was what kept us warm. So
is it traditional bunker gear or is anything different?
Traditional bunker gear. Yep. It was the only thing different really was our hoods. They were a lot thicker. I wish I would have kept a few of those for some of these cold Nebraska days. But.
Oh, that'd be really nice.
But yeah, it's typical bunker gear. And we took care of, about 250 buildings in McMurdo Station. And then out at the runways, there was another station that was basically a trailer house on skis, is kind of how to describe
Trailer
it.
house on skis. Okay.
So, they would move that. Basically, the ice runway was, everything was on skids or skis. All the buildings, they were like, trailer houses on skis. Is the best way to explain it.
Well, it makes it easy to move around. Yeah, you're right.
Yep. So, but we would have ARF rigs out there, and we would do standbys for all the incoming and departures that the Air Force did. So, our typical day was a lot of, if you're out at the runway, you were doing hard stands. Basically, like anytime a plane would take off, you'd have to go out right as they were getting ready to take off and sit at a hard stand until they were, I think it was half hour, 45 minutes, can't remember exactly, out in the air. Then they kind of knew that they had already were on their way and they were fine. The arrivals, they would call on the radio saying they were 100 miles out, and then we'd get up, put our gear on, hop in the truck, go out to the hard stand, and as soon as they landed and went to the taxiway, we would turn around and go back to the station. And that was pretty much all you did out there every day.
So what is the purpose of being there when they landed takeoff specifically for that?
That's
just extra precaution?
That's the Air Force's policy. So, but yeah, even though we were there, right there, but they wanted it just in case, which gave us something to do. Because there's not very many calls. But when you were at Station 1 in town, the day consisted of, we had all those buildings. They required that those buildings were inspected monthly. So we'd do fire inspections. We do some sort of training throughout the day, and that was about it. There was, minimal calls. There's,
well, you're in a town of 1,200 people. Yeah. That's kind of where I came from. You have minimal calls.
Yeah.
Even I would suspect even on the EMS side, or did you do any EMS much with that?
We did. Yeah, we did. So when I was there, Station 1 had an engine, a frontline engine that was in service, a tender that was like a 3,500 gallon tender.
Okay.
And then an ambulance. And in the summertime, you had 3 on the engine, 3 on the tender, and 2 on the ambulance. And then you had a captain that was in like a staff vehicle. Those were all in service every day. So we would run EMS calls, but they were few and far between there too. Most of our calls were little hazmat spills. So Antarctica is basically, we're trying to preserve that as much as possible and not leave a smallest impact as we can. So anytime like a vehicle would leak oil or coolant, they would call us out and we would clean it up and then take it back and put it in oil drum, 55-gallon drums, and then they would ship it back out on the cargo ship when they left. But yeah, that was most of our calls, was just little spills. We did have a few good EMS calls where I remember a lady got her hand smashed unloading one of the airplane, stuff off of an airplane. A lot of, slips and falls. It's kind of ice. So
yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember the exact. I had it written down somewhere and I couldn't find it today of like how many calls we actually went on when I was there for that year, but it was very minimal.
Yeah. I could only imagine though that if a fire were to break out there, it would honestly probably be quite extreme once they got out of hand, and I would think it would cause a big wrench in everything they're doing.
Yes. So a lot of the buildings were built like in the 50s and 60s, and they were all like that. They're wood. Well, it's so dry down there. So over time, all that wood is so dry. So if a building does go up, it's going to go fast. They were changing out buildings and updating and stuff, and then all your hydrants were above ground and they were insulated and heated.
Okay, that was my next question is how is
Yep.
the water system? Are there even hydrants there?
Yep. So there's just a few, and it's not your typical hydrant. It's just a valve,
Okay.
like you'd see it like on a sprinkler system. And yeah, but pretty much once you started flowing water, you better not shut down.
Even in the winter months when it gets down
Yes.
to like -50, you still
Yep.
use the hydrant. Well, I mean, I would guess
You
you'd
could.
have to,
Yeah.
but
Yep. So it's definitely a challenge for that. We did have one small fire. It was in a battery room in one of the buildings, for like all the batteries for like your forklifts and everything. I ended up pumping that day and standing outside, and I've actually got frostbite in my left thumb and first two fingers from that. So whenever it gets to about 30 degrees, my fingers start tingling and start turning purple. So, but
wow.
yeah.
Long-term effects, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you have an unexpected souvenir, I guess, from
Exactly.
Antarctica.
Yeah, I had never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, so the summertime was fun. And then in the wintertime, so when I was there in the summertime, I take that back. We had there's about 20 people per shift. You'd have 3 on the engine, 3 on the tender, and 2 on the ambulance. So that's 8, and then you had your captain there, so 9, and then you had 6 more out at the runway. So 15 people per on duty, 20, and then you had the 5 on their Kelly days. And then in the wintertime, the base went from 1,200 people down to about 200 people,
Oh,
and the
geez.
fire department shrank also. So we went to 5 per shift. So on a normal day, we would have 3 on the engine, and then you had 1 on the tender and 1 on the ambulance. And then we also had our Kelly days. So 2 of those days you had all 5 of us. So Sundays and Mondays you had all 5 of us. Tuesday through Saturday you only had 4. So you had 3 on the engine, and then the other guy would jump between the tender and the ambulance depending on what the call was. But yeah, it was the winter time that got very lonely and hard because of the darkness. And then, I think it was 192 actual people that winter. So you got to know everybody real well, but you just kind of your body slows down there in the winter time. And they actually have, like in that August time, they bring in some flights, and the base basically goes from 200 people to like 400 people within a day. So they actually had a meeting with us while we were there saying the population is going to grow. They are all going to look orange because they're suntanned. We are all pasty white. And, they're going to be moving a lot faster than what we are because our bodies have slowed down and everything. And like, they will be happy to be here, and you guys are grumpy. You want out of here, and the people flying in basically had the same thing before they flew down, but it was the opposite. These guys are pasty white. They are grumpy. They move slow,
That is interesting.
They are stuck in their routine. So
that is so cool. It's like, I don't know. It's a I don't know, debrief of everything. Just like, okay, yeah, this is what you're going to go through. This is what they're going through. And like, and you'd think you're fine, right? You'd think like, oh, I don't need to be told this. Like, people are coming, it'll be fine. But I'm sure it was still a shock to you.
Yes.
When people came and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, we were, we had that, our shift ate together on duty and off duty every meal. Like, I mean, we were really close, and that's all you had. We sat at a certain table for every meal. And that first day, we walk into the galley, we get our food, and there's people sitting at our table. And it's like, one of the guys is like, "You're in my seat." And the guy's like, "Well, this seat's open. Go ahead." He's like, "No, you don't understand. That's my seat." And like, it's just like, oh, wow. Like, at the time we're all just like, what, who are you people? And why are you, you're
why do you think you could
routine.
Do this?
Yes.
Oh man, that is so weird. That is, I don't know. It's so cool, but it's so weird. It's just, it would be really fun to get that close to people and to get to know them that well. But yeah, to
Yeah.
not have extra human interaction
Yeah.
for that many months.
It was tough. And that was the thing, like when I was there was no flights for the winter. I mean, it shut down. You were there unless you had a medevac. And we ended up having a medevac because somebody got really sick. And then so they ended up having to re-prepare the runways, which took about 4 or 5 days to get that able to land a plane and then fly them out. Now I believe they still have flights now in the wintertime. So
okay. Well, technology out of what
yeah,
we determined almost 20 years,
yeah,
it's crazy. But like, yeah, just being
yes.
able to move technology forward that far.
Yeah, and that was, back then, you had the internet, but the internet speed was so slow down there, and they had like a computer lab, you don't even see computer labs anymore,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So yeah, the technology has changed so much since then, but yeah, it was definitely a good experience. The pay was decent, for a 25-year-old kid. I think for that year, I think my salary was like 33,000 back then. So, and you had no expenses. There was, the only expense you had was the convenience store and the bar if you wanted to. And then, at the time eBay was huge, so people were buying stuff off eBay all the time. But
but that wouldn't quite work in the wintertime though, at least.
No.
Getting stuff there or anything, but
no, you pretty much had to know what you wanted before you got there.
Oh man. So going back to like the equipment and stuff. So you talked about what you guys had. You had your engine, your tender, and the ambulance. So first off, did you store water in those while they were in the station? Okay.
Yep.
I know even around here, some stations, once it gets wintertime, they don't do that. So
right. We pump, as soon as that truck, it left the station, and as soon as it got parked, it got put in pump gear, you start recirculating water.
Okay.
And we never had anything freeze up. And
Luckily.
then like our frigs, they were, best way to describe them, and they've been updated now, but they were like tanks. They were tracked vehicles. They were called Nodwells.
Okay.
It was like a 4-seater. It was on tracks, and they had like a little skid on a flatbed with Purple K powder, and I can't remember what the other one was right off the top. I just drew a blank. But that was all, it was basically these old tanks, basically, is how the best way to describe them. Now they're actually like on Ford like 550s with tracks and all these, but the same updated skids. But yeah, it's the equipment's definitely unique down there. So everything was 4-wheel drive or had tracks.
I would think it'd have to be.
Yeah.
So I know you said there was like a mechanic and stuff there too. So if something broke, what was the process, or what, first of all, did anything break while you were there? But like, what was the process like to try to get parts, especially like in the wintertime, if something did break in the wintertime?
They did a lot of fabricating of their own.
That's good.
Or they had, they knew, okay, we know we need these things on hand.
Just in case.
Just in case. But yeah, our trucks, just like anywhere now, they go in for maintenance every, so many hours, or, they did a really good job keeping everything up and running. So
that's awesome. Let's see. And then the other thing I was thinking of, and you probably don't know anything about this one, so it's just gonna get thrown out there. And if you don't know anything about it, that's fine. But like, okay, what if you actually legitimately need a new truck? Like, does everything just get flown in, or is there another way to get stuff there? So or
they a lot of times they would come in on a cargo plane, or they would get put on the cargo ship. So about December, right before Christmas, the Navy would come in with an or the Coast Guard would come in with an icebreaker, and they would break a path from the open water all the way up to McMurdo and clear out the ice. and then a cargo ship would come in and they would offload all the cargo that would be needed for the winter, and then they would load everything up that needed to leave. They were there for about a week or so, and then they would leave, and then the fuel ship would come in and resupply the station with all the fuel that we would need.
I didn't even think about that either.
Yeah. And
okay.
so so things would come in on the ship, or in the summertime, you'd get a lot of your like fresh fruit, that was a luxury, fresh fruit and vegetables. When that came in, they called them freshies. They people would scramble to get to the kitchen, to the galley, to get a banana or an orange or an apple.
Things we definitely take for granted.
Yes. That first flight in after the winter, when they brought in some fruit, people were hoarding fruit. Like they would take it and like put it in their jacket, and just because they hadn't had it for 5 months, which you just kind of take for granted.
Okay. I'm trying to think if I have any other question with that. We pretty much went through most of anything I was curious about, or like what is different. Is there anything that you can think of that's vastly different, or that surprised you when you were down there, or any stories you want to tell, either anything?
I don't know how many stories I could actually tell. We could be here all day long if I started it. It was just a neat experience to go do. At the time I was like, man, that, I'd never even heard of anybody going to Antarctica. And then when I was there was a couple that was from Nebraska, and it ended up being, at the time, my insurance sales agent's like niece.
What?
I'm like, how in the world? I'm, thousands and thousands of miles away from home, and there's somebody that I know, the connections, it was just crazy. And then once I got back, I'd start talking about it, and they're like, oh yeah, my cousin's brother, whatever, they've been down there. And I'm like, how in the world? I'd never heard of this until I've been there. And, so it was really, it was a good experience. I came back home. I basically let my parents have power of attorney over all my money. And they paid off my student loans. And I basically would have like $200 a month just to live off of, to do whatever I needed to down there.
Which it seems like it'd be plenty, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it was cheap to live down there. I mean, everything was paid for. So, but I paid off all my student loans from the university in that year time frame, and still had money to, when I left, one of the guys and I traveled. We spent a week in New Zealand traveling, and then we flew to Australia. And my grandma actually flew to Australia and traveled with us for a week, and we rented an RV for a week and just drove
that's cool.
through Australia for a week, so it was just, definitely would love to go back.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So if people want to get down there, do you know how to like start looking into that?
If you just look up Antarctica Fire Department, you should be able to get right there. The contracts change. When I was with them, it was through Raytheon Polar Services. I know it's changed through different companies that contract everybody out. When I went down there, you didn't have to be ARF certified. They would train you on that. Now they require you to have an ARF certification, so you can get that at different, I can't remember. I think there's one in Minnesota that you can go to. I think the Salt Lake City one's shut down, but there's like 3 or 4 throughout the US that you could go get your ARF certification through. Be an EMT.
Do you happen to know how long that tends to take for the ARF? I haven't looked into it, so I don't know.
I don't know for sure. I know when the guys that went to Salt Lake City, I think they were there for like a week or 10 days.
So I'm assuming it probably went up, just because certifications for firefighting tend to do that.
Yeah.
So, but
it's not bad. I mean, I've gained a lot lifelong friendships Like I said, my roommate, when I was down there, yeah, he lives in Colorado still. A lot of the people that I was with were from Colorado because Raytheon was based out of Colorado. So, but yeah, I still keep in touch with quite a few of them. A lot of them have moved on. When they got back, that was the stepping stone of getting onto a paid department somewhere for them, just kind of like myself. One of my buddies is on a rescue truck in Houston. Another one's on an engine in Aurora, Colorado. Some of them have gone and switched careers and became police officers. So yeah, it's just, yeah, it's kind of neat just to see. But
that was really cool. And yeah, for 20 years later that you're still talking to a lot of them and stuff, that says a lot right there. Yeah. But like you said, it is a really good stepping stone. And since it is cheap to live there once you're there, you do have to deal with, there's a lot of cons to it, but there's a lot of pros to it too. So you have to really weigh out if that's good or not. Yep. Do you happen to know if anyone was in a relationship or married or anything while they were down there?
Yeah. So there was a couple firefighters that were dating when we were there. One of our dispatchers, her husband, they were married, and her husband worked in the mechanic shop.
Okay.
So we're married, you got your own room together, or whatever. Yeah. So there's definitely people that were married that lived there, or not live there, work there, because you can't physically stay there. It's all contract. So.
Yeah. Okay. I was just wondering how that worked. And I guess if somebody were married to somebody back in the States or somewhere else, I think it'd be probably similar to Army, military life.
Yeah.
With it too.
I would assume that. I mean, like some of the guys I worked with, they had girlfriends or fiancés back in the States when we were there. So the long distance relationships, kind of that, and
it's tough, but
yep.
Yeah. People can make it work. They make it work every day. I don't know how to make it work. I don't know if I could do it personally. Actually, I know I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I was, for about a year before Chris and I got married, we were living 2.5 to 3 hours apart, and that was hard enough. So I'm like, no, that's not happening again.
Yeah. No.
So, between Nebraska and Antarctica, no, that's not happening.
No.
Oh, no. So yeah, that's cool. It's an amazing experience, and just hearing you talk about it and how much you loved it, and all the stories I've already heard about it, and I'm sure like the more I talk to you, the more we hang out and stuff, I'm gonna hear more, and I'm excited for. But
there's probably quite a few stories that probably aren't podcast worthy.
Podcast worthy or podcast
appropriate, maybe.
Appropriate. There you go. Much like firefighting in general.
Yes.
All right. So are you ready to move on to the next section?
You
Justin?
bet.
All right. So let's go on to the Family Firefighter Survival section of the show. For those of you who are new or have not listened for a while, this is a section where we get into our personal lives. So what our families look like, how we make things work between the job and family time, struggles we may have had with the balance or other factors, and ways we can make it better. This section, I don't like to script it. I like to go off of whatever we happen to talk about. If whoever I have on as a guest wants to talk about something specific, we will go with that. Otherwise, we just talk and we just go into whatever kind of comes up. So you ready for this, Justin?
You bet. Let's do it.
All right. So as a basis, what does your family look like?
Okay. So my wife, Hillary, and I have been married. May will be, what are we, 14 years, I think. So
I was going to say, you better get that right, just in case she listens to this.
Yeah. Hopefully she doesn't watch this. And then we've got 2 boys. Eli's 11 and Owen's 9. We live out on a small farm north of Central City. The boys have 4-H animals. We've got a few cows, and then we're getting show pigs here in another few weeks. So yeah, we're busy out here on the farm. We just got a couple bottle calves from the neighbor. They had twins or whatever, so we acquired them. So we're starting that project again. And Owen's cow still has to calf yet. So we're busy with that here at the farm. And then, yeah, juggling. My wife's the school nurse in Central City. That's where the boys go to school, and juggling school and work, and then me working in Grand Island. And then the farm life. Yeah, it's kind of hectic. We're pulled in a lot of directions, but my wife is amazing. She's got her planner, and she has everything written down, and she's the organizer, and
she's my kind of lady.
Yeah, keeps everything running. So which has been, it's great having that support. I was already on the fire department when we started dating, so this is all she knows, is my schedule. So like for you, you kind of got thrown into it, after, so that's nice with that's all we know. But this last year, I had some medical issues, and I got taken off the truck and put on light duty for, what was that, 3 or 4 months before I could have surgery. And so I went to a Monday through Friday 8 to 5 schedule, and that was a huge, struggle. That was, we had to adapt to me being home every night and me driving.
That is back. Weird. Most people don't find that as a struggle, because most people find that as normal.
Yeah. And I was sitting there, I'm like, I struggled. I'm like, how does anybody get anything done at their house? Like, I'm like, I'm used to having 2 days off, and like, okay, I can mow my first day off in the morning, or do this, or work on the farm, doing stuff with the cattle or the pigs, and I'm like, I get home at 5 o'clock and I would just be like, I'm shot. I'm done. I can't do anything. And then, okay, we got the weekend. All right, here we go. Oh no, we've got soccer. We've got the baseball. We got, like, how does anybody get anything done that works a Monday through Friday job?
There are definitely pros and cons to it, for sure. I mean, you get to see your family every night, which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, you get to see them a little bit. But yeah, a lot of the other things that take up our lives happen within those times. You're like, I have no time to actually do anything.
Yeah. So, so yeah, this last year was kind of a struggle. And we were, that typical firefighter attitude, adapt and overcome, and that's exactly what we had to do, and in September, I was able to get back on the truck and, get back to normal. And then there was that struggle of, well, you're not home every night now, and, getting
got
back
used to
that,
being home.
Yeah, got used to that. So we kind of struggled with getting that and back in order, and, it's still, what are we now? 5 months into
Something
it
like
now,
that,
since September, and we're still like, there's still struggles trying to figure out, miscommunication here and there.
So one question I got, so how do you, with having the farm and your wife's a nurse, school nurse, and you work on the fire department, there are days where you're not at home together, or like no one's at home for a time. So how does the farm life work? How does that work out then?
So it basically, she knows. I try to make sure like there's a bale of hay in for the cows, like in the wintertime, so that, and if I know I'm going to be on shift or going to be working a 48, I always make sure that that's taken care of. Her and the boys take care of the grain. They grain the cows every morning and night. And just, something like a few weeks ago, I was getting ready to go to work, and I go out, I did chores, fed everything, and I heard some commotion. It was 5:30 in the morning, and go get the flashlight and kind of like, oh, Owen's heifer calved about 3 weeks early. I'm like, was not expecting that. And of course, that was when it was one of those cold, crappy, windy days, and snowy days. And like, okay, well, not much I can do. I got to go to work. So I come back inside and told Hillary, I'm like, hey, the calf looks fine, looks dried off. Like, I'll have to deal with it tomorrow, just check on her before you leave, and, check on her when you get home, make sure everything's good. And then when I got to work, I was talking about, I was stressed out because I'm like, I don't know how long, it was cold and all this. And I went to the battalion chief. I'm like, is there vacation available today? And he's like, yeah, there is. I'm like, I'm leaving. Like, I'm going home, so I came home and, got everything worked out that way, but yeah, you just got to rely on each other and try to take care of things. And
Oh, it's got to be ridiculous and crazy. Just, yeah, because you have things like that happen. It's just like, oh, okay. And it's probably nice if the kids are older that they're able to go and help with the animals too.
Yep. And that was, back when COVID first hit and they shut the schools down, that, my kids at the time were 4th grade and 2nd grade, so when I was at work and my wife wasn't working at the school at the time, so she was working at the nursing home, we had to, we didn't have daycare. I was like, you guys are going to have to stay home. And we checked in on them a lot, and just kind of, but it really made them grow up. I mean, they grew up a lot in that couple months.
That's good.
And then this summer with my wife and I both being laid up after surgeries and everything, they had to take care of the chores. They were like, we can't lift these 5-gallon buckets of grain. I'm like, well, instead of filling them full, fill them to what you can, okay. If you can do half, okay, well, you're going to need to take 2 trips. If you can only do a third, you're going to do 3, and like just trying to get them to realize that, and
definitely
so
builds problem solving skills. Like,
yes, it did. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds like you have a couple of really good kids. It sounds like you've done a really great job, you and your wife both, of raising them, just being able to take up stuff like that. And I think having the farm life in general is a good way to do that if you have that available to you, just because they learn responsibility early on.
Yeah, definitely. They learn a good work ethic, because they got it. That's one thing we try to preach is, you don't eat until they eat. They got to be fed. They got to be, taken care of before you take care of yourself. Try to keep that mantra, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. So,
oh my goodness, and that's gonna follow them into adulthood. That's gonna follow them. Well, we were talking before we started recording about just you being an officer and some things that go along with that. And I'm sure that mentality has gone into the way you handle things too, even at the station or other things. Take care of the other firefighters first. Make sure everything's good. Make sure before you worry about yourself. And
yeah, it is. I mean, that's one thing. As a firefighter, you worry about yourself, and then you worry about your crew, and you still do that as an officer, but there's a lot more weighing on you. When your decision affects those 4 guys or gals, and that weighs on you. That's a huge stress, but it's also part of that being that officer, being that job. But I love being an officer. I love that, aspect of the job. It's a lot more behind the desk, like we talked earlier, a lot more sitting behind a desk than I thought it'd be, but it's still good.
Yeah. It's like when I do my photography work and stuff, everyone thinks, oh, being a photographer, you're just out taking pictures all the time. That's where you see me. About 80% of the work that you don't see is me sitting at a computer and just, whatever. That's why I have to have my office the way I like it. Just because I spend so much time here. But same thing. Yeah. They don't see all the behind the scenes work to it necessarily. Yeah. So no, but they are learning that work ethic from that young early age, and it sounds like they're doing great with it so far. So
they enjoy it. They got like I said, we got a couple bottle calves the other night, and they were just, as soon as that kid, they understand that they've got to do bottles morning and night, and they're just loving it. I'll give them a week, and then we'll see how they like it. They're liking it, so it's fun to see that, where they take initiative and get out there and do things.
Mm-hmm. So I don't mean to jump back. Well, I kind of do. I don't know, but I'm going to jump back a little bit because I want to see if there's anything, and maybe there's nothing else. Maybe there's something I missed or anything, but talking about the adjustment from going from 24-hour shifts what 24/48 schedule, going to a Monday through Friday job, and then the switch back. I know you said there was a lot of work, a lot of headaches that went into that and whatnot. Can you go into any more detail with it?
So a lot of the when I went to the Monday through Friday, I basically was assigned to the training chief. So a lot of my time was either doing different trainings or putting together training classes.
That's got to be fun, though. I love that stuff.
It was, and it's kind of sparked some interest of like, okay, maybe this is something, as I get older in my career, maybe pursuing that, maybe when the training chief retires, maybe going for that position. I don't know. I love the training. Logan Watts and I, we just put together a pump ops class for our department. And we are teaching that here middle of April, right after Easter sometime. So it's kind of fun to be able to do that and like get into that aspect of it. And when you do a training, that the guys are always going to complain, oh, we got to train, or
always.
But then when you get out there, they're like, oh, this is great, we need to do more of this, so it's kind of neat to see that when you've designed that class and get that like that buy-in from the crew, so but yeah, that was pretty much what I did when I was on light duty, was just kind of assisting the training chief and going through and preparing classes, teaching classes. I helped out with one of the recruits. We hired a recruit back in August. So I helped him for a few weeks while he was in academy, and that was fun to do. Seeing some, the kid, he was a kid. He was 19 years old. So like,
I know, definitely feels like a kid even to me though.
Yeah, but it was, it was good. It was good. It made me appreciate my normal schedule and being on shift a lot more. And just being, the thing I missed probably the most of being on light duty was being with the guys, being with the crew, and that aspect of the job. There'd be nights where, I was at Station 1. That's where my crew was, and that's where I was at for light duty. So on my shift days, my crew is there. There'd be nights I'm like, I'd call my wife. I'm like, I'm just going to eat supper here tonight. I'll be late tonight, and just sit down and, to try to get that brotherhood, that bond back, because I needed that. So yeah, that was a struggle, but it was, again, you adapt and overcome. I know that's a cliche phrase, but but that's what we do.
It's what you need to do sometimes. It's the only way to do, because otherwise you just kind of get wallowing and you almost, I've gotten stuck in the rut before. You kind of do self-pity talk and you're like, oh, this is sucky. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to be over here and pouting in the corner. And like, that's not good for anybody.
No.
And sometimes you do just need to go back to some old habits like that, where it's harmless. You go back in, you have supper with the guys, you hang out there for a while. You may not be able to do that every night. You wish you could.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, you still do it whenever you can. It's no different than just going out and hanging out with other friends and stuff, right?
Yep.
But you need to still do those things to make it,
exactly.
Make sure your mental health is still okay.
Yes. And that's one thing, with mental health is a huge issue right now. With across the world. It's, COVID has really played a havoc on that, That's one thing, I'm on the peer support team for the fire department, for our department, and it's, we're trying, as much as we can, just keep talking to people and trying to keep ahead of the game and on that, just to make sure guys aren't getting into that self-pity, getting into that, burnout,
So if you don't mind, I'm going to dig into that for a second.
Sure.
So you brought it up. So you saying you're kind of trying to stay ahead of it. So how do you how are you working to try to stay ahead of it?
A lot of it is just talking with the guys. I think, what do we have on the team? I think 7 or 8 of us from the department.
So is it more of a like quote unquote official capacity where they know that like you're trying to help them on behalf of the peer support team, or is it more like firefighter to firefighter?
It's more of that peer, just the
Okay.
firefighter, a lot of it, like, just checking in, you see guys, you kind of see, tendencies that they, like this guy's usually outgoing and he's kind of reclusing to his bedroom more, so you just go have a little chat and just see how they're doing, and just kind of, or you'll have somebody come in and be like, hey, I need to talk, this isn't going good at home, or, I'm frustrated with this at work, or, my kids are driving me crazy, whatever it is, and a lot of it is just listening, you know, that's the best thing for as a peer support person is just to listen. I actually did a class yesterday in Lincoln with some peer support stuff and some chaplains, and yeah, that was basically all it was. You're not there to talk; you're there to listen. So it's kind of one of those. Sit there and listen to them. A lot of times I'll be like, "Hey, let's go out for breakfast tomorrow morning," or and that opens everything up a lot of times. So, and just if you can stay on top, as you're going through and you're just talking, and that's how I guess I kind of stay ahead of it. You can kind of see it, and hopefully you can kind of bring them back up before it gets into crisis mode.
Yeah. It easily dips down into that too. It can very fast too. Like it's something somebody could not have a problem with anything, and then a couple days later they're dipped. They're that far low, and it could be maybe you just haven't seen the signs because maybe they're just that good at hiding them. I know I have been in the past. I've been very good at hiding stuff with it.
Oh yeah.
Especially us as firefighters in general, we're so good at pushing things off and
well, we're the ones that help. We don't need help.
Yeah, exactly. So like, what? No.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people, I love that a lot of what you're talking about is that you're listening, because so many people, that's the last thing they want to hear is how to fix a problem.
Right.
They just want to be heard. They just like
and
listen to this, and yeah.
And that's firefighter nature is
fix
things. I got to fix it now.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with that with my youngest right now. He got some new appliance to like try to help bring his jaw forward, and he's not eating very well. And it's like, you need to eat. I need to fix this now. And this it's like my wife's constantly reminding me, he will get there. He's just got to figure out how to chew better, and do this right, But yeah, that's that initial like, I need this fixed. I need this done now. So it's hard. It's still a struggle for me. I still do that all the time. So
Chris gets a little annoyed with me because he'll bring up something of a little grievance he had with a friend or somebody else, or it's just like, and I'm just like, well, this is what you need to do. You need to do this, 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 and this, and this. Like, it's so easy. How do you not see it? And then it's just like, he's like, Taylor, I never asked your opinion on it. I'm like, you're right.
Yeah. I just wanted you to listen.
Yep. Slowly learning it, like, and it should be so simple, because I want that too. I mean, I know I want that, but it doesn't stop me from still doing it to him.
Yeah.
So,
and that's human nature.
Exactly. So, no, that peer support team sounds like it's a good, I'm not going to call it organization, good group of people to have around for it.
And it's definitely, it's something that we pushed as a union to get our department to do. And when we first started, we were like, if we can help 2 to 3 people, we were like, hey, this is gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't, and it's not, it ranges from small petty stuff like, my wife and I got in an argument last night to, addictions, alcohol, drugs, whatever, gambling, so it's across the board. But it's crazy. I can't imagine. We have the numbers. I can't say the numbers, but we are busy, way more busier than I thought we would be, with talking to people. And like I said, it's not all crisis. It's just a little, hey, I need to vent,
Yes. But, that keeps people on the right track. So is it, with a peer support group, is that specifically just for the firefighters? Does that also encompass any of the other staff or chiefs or anything? And then does it ever encompass any of the actual families?
So it's more of the firefighters. The chiefs, I would assume we could, if they reached out to it, yeah, we wouldn't say no. We do have the families kind of, they will call us every now and then, like, hey, my husband's not doing so hot, could you check in with him? We don't really try to help, the family out too much. We'll help, like, hey, we'll steer you in the right direction, to where you can maybe go see a counselor or go talk to a pastor, go, whatever.
Steer them to somewhere that probably is better equipped to handle that.
Yes, we are, we're not therapists, we're not counselors, we're just that source to get you to that if you need that. We have the means to get, here's the phone number to call, here's the website. These are the counselors that we've seen, that I think would help you, because that's one of our things that we decided as a peer support team, is that we go to counsel. We, once a quarter, we call it our tune-up, just to kind of offload everything that we get kind of brought to us. So to make sure that we're not taking on too much, or we're not.
That is smart.
And then you can also, like, when you're recommending, hey, we think you need to go see somebody. Well, what do you know? You've never been.
Oh, yes, no, I have. Yeah.
So, and we're like, and it's one of those, for everybody out there, if you're struggling or anything like that, go see a counselor, talk to your peers, whatever. But, if you see a counselor and you don't click with that one, don't give up. Go get a different one. Keep seeing until you find that one. And
everyone thinks it's so weird to talk to just that they have to talk to just one person. You don't have to just talk to one person.
Right. Yeah. If you don't like them or you don't mesh with that counselor, definitely go find somebody else. Go find a different one. I've been through, what have I been through? 3 or 4 now before I found one that I liked, and then she moved. So I'm back in that process. So now I'm back in that process of trying to find somebody else to kind of go see. And so,
now overall, it just sounds like a nice formal way that your department and the union, everyone is saying that we care about this and we're trying to help it before it goes too far, before we have problems, because we care about our firefighters, we care about our people. You guys aren't therapists, you aren't there officially, in that capacity or anything. But yeah, it is the official, we care. This is our step to make sure you can get the help you need. And you feel comfortable making that step, because it's really hard to figure out who do I talk to get advice about even where to go or what I need to do. Because honestly, Googling it is not going to cut it for most of us. We're going to be like, we get overwhelmed and we're just going to say no.
Yep. And that is one of the hardest things to do, is like admit that you need to go talk to somebody. And that, like, for me, when I first, this is even before I was on peer support, we were just getting ready to start it. And I was having some issues after a call, and, some people are like, you need to go talk to somebody, and my wife is like, yes, go talk to somebody, because you can talk to me, but it's not helping, so yeah, I was very vulnerable, but I sat in that parking lot just to walk inside and make an appointment for over 45 minutes because I was scared to go in there, and I'm hoping that, with society is changing a little bit, that stigma of, firefighters are brave, strong, yeah, we are, but you also got to be able to take care of yourself, and be able to admit that, hey, I need help, even though we're the helpers, I need help.
Well, I'm going to go out there on a limb and say that I think that therapy, mental health counseling, anything for that is also a good preventative measure, not just when you're in crisis. So if you don't have something wrong with you, I still think it's a good idea to go talk to somebody, because first of all, I'm sure there's stuff that's in there that in your brain that you don't even think about that are weighing you down. But if nothing else, it gives you the tools to stay healthier. I mean, you go to doctor's visits for checkups. You have yearly physicals.
Yep.
Do the same for your brain, even if you're completely healthy.
Absolutely. That's a great concept. You see a doctor, when you're sick, you see a doctor just for a wellness check.
Yeah.
Do the same thing for your mental capacity. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So. No, this has been awesome. Is there anything else on this family topic that you'd like to? I know we kind of veered away from the family.
No,
topic.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's kind of weaving in and out. But is there anything else with that you'd like to touch?
I think we're pretty good. I just want to thank you for having me on here. This is great. This is fun.
Oh, thank you so much.
I listen to your podcast and I'm like, I don't know how anybody does this and like how they do this. And when you reached out, I'm like, I was so nervous of like, I don't know what to say. I don't know. Is this scripted? Is this like, so.
I pride myself in my podcast on being very laid back. It's just a conversation between two friends and we just have fun and go for it. And like I said, rabbit trails, I love them. And we've already gone on a bunch today.
Oh, yes.
But that to me, I want these connections and I want the people listening to see these connections and make their own connections like this with other people. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So hopefully it wasn't too nerve-wracking once we actually got on and got settled in.
Yep. Dialed in a little bit. Yep.
Oh, perfect. Is there anything you'd like to talk about, plug or anything, or if people want to find you or like anything you'd like to talk about?
Not really. I'm on Facebook, Justin Ferris. I'm not one of those. I don't have a website. I don't have I'm not a public speaker. I'm not like that. Reach out if you want. I can give you more information on Antarctica, whatever, or whatever you want. So
yeah. Perfect. And I'll give the shout out to basically if anyone wants to contact you, if they can't find you for some reason, if they contact me, I'll get them in touch with you and stuff and everything. So
sounds good.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for tuning into this episode of the Couplings Fire podcast. I've been your host, Taylor Anderson. I've been on with Justin Ferris. And I don't know what I'm talking about next week. As always, it's going to be something awesome and cool. I never have anything better to say than that, but something awesome next week. If anyone has any topics they would like to hear about or any speakers they would like to have on and listen to, send me an email, send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. And I will do my best to get it done. So thank you everybody for listening and I will see you all next week. Thanks for coming by and listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Couplings Fire Podcast. See you next time, everybody.